Our children are priceless, and we would do anything to protect them. So why aren't you using Go Free to protect them from the most harmful ideas? Decades in the making, Go Free is a simple yet brilliant practice designed to free us from destructive socio-political ideas. As words are the tools with which we think, Go Free promotes precise, simple, and targeted language to counteract psychological warfare. When you go free of the system's control over your word choice, you liberate your thinking. As you grow, you can empower others. And the most important thing you can do is inoculate our children against the ideas that are meant to harm them.
Hi Hans, how are you today? Let me set up your microphone. Mic is on the way to you. Do you want to co-host, Hans? Give me a thumbs up or down. Right, let me just find some links. We'll hopefully give it a minute for people to arrive. Hi, Angelin. There's a mic on the way to you. Can someone let me know if you can hear me okay? Because I think I'm having some tech problems.
You're crystal clear.
Okay, okay, that's good. My screen keeps going a bit funny. Right. Let me pop something in the Jumbotron. Hi, cool Papa Jane Magic. Great to see you. Hi, Jerome. Thanks for coming. Give me a second. Let me get a couple of things set up. Yeah, sorry about that. Everything was a little glitchy, so I hope it's not going to be one of those days. Hi, Tree Godfather. Let me send you a mic. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Slight issues with my device, I think, today. But anyway, I hope everyone is well. Give me a second and let's get the intro out of the way. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing No White Guilt Space. We hold this space every day at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on X. We are a no white guilt community that meets to practice the concepts and lexicon developed by Jason Kerner, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find Jason here on X as at No White Guilt NWG, or on YouTube and other platforms as simply No White Guilt. You can also find his work online at nowhiteguilt.org. We discuss a wide variety of topics of interest to white people and look for ways to apply solutions to the problems our people face. I am CKO, your host, and my co-hosts this evening are yet to be sorted out. We run pretty casually here. Kindly raise your hand if you'd like to jump in. Otherwise, I will call on speakers in turn for their thoughts. And if you'd like to jump into the conversation, feel free to request a mic and we will get you set up. We only ask that people comport themselves as much as possible to the Go Free lexicon and dialect. And please don't interrupt other speakers and act like a proper lady or gentleman of the West. So with that out of the way and hopefully tech issues resolved, a big hello and good morning, afternoon or evening to you all. So as we do in the shade, under the shade tree, I will start with our Westman of the day. It's certainly a very different character to yesterday's Westman of the crocodile hunter. Hello to a few more people arriving. Hi to Endless Thoughts. Hi Gladiator and Benjamin too. And Bio Spirit. Nice to see you all. Let me send that through. So hopefully it has loaded into the Jumbotron. My Westman of the day today is Frederick Aberline. Some of you may recognize the name instantly, and others might be thinking, nope, never heard of him, or perhaps the name is familiar, but you can't quite place it. And if you fall into one of the latter camps, I think I can probably put all the pieces together with just 3 words. And the 3 words are Jack the Ripper. Frederick Aberline was the chief inspector for the London Metropolitan Police, best known for leading the on-the-ground investigations into the Jack the Ripper murders back in 1888. So as well as a worldwide network of armchair detectives and online sleuths, there are at least 114 non-fiction books and a huge range of fiction as well, taking the numbers into the high hundreds, possibly even over the 1,000 books written about the Jack the Ripper case. And it is one of, if not the most written about cases in criminal history. But poor Frederick Aberline doesn't get a great deal out of that, and all the attention tends to fall onto the unknown Jack. So I thought he would be a really interesting contender today. So Frederick George Aberline, he was born in 1843 in Dorset in England. He was the youngest son of Edward Aberline, a saddle maker, a sheriff's officer, and a minor local government official. He was one of 4 children. His father sadly passed away when he was young in 1849. He would have only been around 6 years old. and his mother, Hannah, went on to open a small shop, and she raised her 4 children on her own. Abberline worked as a clockmaker until he moved to London to join the Metropolitan Police in 1863. So he would have been presumably 20 at that point, 19 or 20. He started as a constable, and he was noted to have a very sharp mind, and he was very dedicated to his work. And he had several rapid promotions. He became a sergeant in 1865 and then an inspector in 1873. And he was then transferred to Whitechapel's H Division. And that's where he gained deep knowledge of the East End and the criminal underworld of London at the time. Excuse me. What else do we have on him here? Yeah, he was promoted to Inspector First Class at Scotland Yard, and the Ripper murders brought him back to Whitechapel in 1888 due to his expertise of the area, and he became the lead detective on that case. He coordinated the investigations into the brutal murders of at least 5 women in Whitechapel. And he kind of blended his familiarity with the local underworld and criminal activity in that area with very methodical police work. And unfortunately, as you know, the identity of Jack the Ripper was never fully solved, and so the case remained unsolved throughout his life and afterwards. And so there have been many portrayals of Frederick Abberline. Of course, there's been multiple movies and TV shows made, and very often in these, he is portrayed as a drunk or a drug addict or a womanizer. And the reality is that none of these depictions are actually rooted in any type of truth. He was a very well respected and disciplined and very sort of mild, gentle mannered officer. I read that he was noted to have often been mistaken for a bank manager due to his demeanor. On a sort of more personal level, he was married twice. He was firstly married to a young lady named Martha. Very sadly, she died only 2 months after they had been married of tuberculosis, or back then it was still known as consumption, which I thought was terribly sad because he'd not long been promoted, just married. He must have thought that life was going well, and then this misfortune kind of kicked in. He later married again a few years later and had another promotion. But I thought it was interesting to just touch on that human aspect as well, of how much strain it must have been for him, his wife, and his sort of close circle, dealing with such an intense case of murders that had gripped Victorian England. And so, of course, his reputation, endures and his name lives on, but a lot of the representations of him are not particularly favourable or fair. Abberline was also involved in the Cleveland Street scandal in Victorian Britain, which was a very notorious case that was, in a nutshell, there was a male brothel in Fitzrovia in London, and there was a sort of network of high society clients, aristocracy, politicians, possibly even some royal family involvement. And it was a brothel for young boys. And it was Abberline's team who raided the premises. And this led to, quite a lot of public outcry and controversy over the disparity, really, in Victorian society, the class differences and the sort of degeneracy and vice that was afoot in that Victorian period. Abberline remained as chief inspector for 29 years of service, and when he left the police, he had 84 commendations for his work. After he retired, he joined the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, the renowned American firm, and he worked on international cases. His most publicized role was infiltrating Monte Carlo's casinos to detect and expose cheating gamblers. And this assignment used his skills that he'd obviously acquired during his time in the force, and he made headlines for breaking up many sophisticated fraud rings in the early 1900s. And he finally retired in 1904 and moved to spend the rest of his days in Bournemouth, which, if he were able to come back to life and see now, he would certainly find a much changed environment. So I don't know if I can really translate my thought process as to why I chose Frederick Abberline, but I think knife crime is certainly very much on my mind at the moment after the appalling anti-white slaughter of Irina Zaruska. Of course, in the UK, we have significant problems with knife crime in London, much more so than during Abberline's time. But I thought it was also interesting that, you know, he has been so white erased, his reputation has been so damaged. He was an honourable man who did very fine work. And I thought it was also an interesting comparison to what we see now and the way that people look at the current police force, certainly in the UK and perhaps in some of your countries too. And I very much hope in the future we will once again have a society that's less white erased and where the police are honourable, decent men catching criminals and worthy of our respect. So I thought he was a fascinating and most worthy candidate for Westman of the Day, and I hope that you agree. And I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts. So, Hans de Skipper, please take the floor.
The first thing that I noticed was that he had this supports my hypothesis that the white nuclear family was the gold standard, because he had two marriages that went, you know, till death do us part. He married Martha, and then she died, and then he married Emma, you know, until till either one of them died. So yes, he was by all he was a normal white man, and the fact that he is you know in his cast as these other types of characters, it some of that will be just artistic license, but some of that is also the anti-white narrative. This was, you know, a white man, so obviously in the anti-white narrative he's going to have that seed of evil inside him, and that's going to come out in various ways. Now usually I think in probably every story about Jack the Ripper, the detective is going to be one of the good guys, but many times they twist the story so that the good guy is really the bad guy, and the the murderer becomes this sympathetic person with a lot of problems. So yes, that's I don't know that history very well, but I do remember seeing one movie about Jack the Ripper, and I'm trying to forget it. I think I was too young.
Yeah, thanks, Hans. I can understand that. It's a heavy going story. Whether you read about it or you watch something, it's certainly not light viewing. Definitely not one for the children. Eindelin, are you familiar with Jack the Ripper or Frederick Abberline?
I'm familiar with the story. It's funny though. I used to have a uh really deep interest in serial killers when I was younger, but to be honest, and now that I think about it, I don't know too much about the detectives that actually did the investigation, which is it's strange because really how much would we even know without their investigation and the forensics and everything else behind the actual crimes. But I was always really interested in the mind of like these serial killers, and it just kind of fascinated me to just because I just couldn't understand. I just can't, especially at a younger age. Nowadays we have this true crime genre where it's endless stories. You could spend, I mean, you could never see it all. But back in the day, you used to have to buy books and stuff, and now they also, I think it was Court TV used to have a serial killer database that used to be pretty cool. But besides that, there wasn't much material on this stuff, and you were actually looked at as kind of weird for taking an interest in it. Now it's one of the most popular genres on YouTube. But it's just funny because I never came to that realization that as interested as I was in the killers themselves, I never really thought about looking into the actual detectives and stuff. So, but it's really a strange person to try to white erase, but that just goes to show that white eraser just knows no limitations. But I would almost be more interested in the motives behind that than the actual killer himself, to be honest, at this point. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think so many people have that interest. It captures people's imagination, clearly. I mean, there's a huge market for Ripper stories and books, and obviously there's been multiple productions and so on. So it's definitely something that captures people's imagination. And as you say, now we have the internet, we have trials live streamed from courtrooms. We have massive communities involved in kind of crime stories. So it's something that a lot of people find interesting. But that's kind of why he stuck with me a little, because all the focus, as I said, goes on the story and the mysterious unknown Ripper identity. And so little is kind of left over, and you know, people don't often spare a thought for the real life of this man. You know, just I think of him working day to day, coming back to his desk, and I think so many of us can relate to a feeling of anger and frustration at injustice, at murder, and at things not being figured out, you know, things not being addressed, things not being dealt with properly. And I try to link that to imagine the frustration that he must have felt carrying this weight of trying to solve this crime with all the country's eyes on him. I thought it was quite fascinating. Biospirit?
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking of when you were speaking of this is how uncommon something like this was, to the point that it became so many books and so much lore and so much written about it and talked about it, was because it was so unusual. It was so out of the ordinary for something like this to happen in a country of the West. And it you can look at any period in our time other than the present, and there are these kind of like horror movie characters who are written about because they're so unusual. It just doesn't normally happen. And so it makes for a good book and for good reading and good TV because it's not the norm. So now we've got where this is happening on a daily basis. It's happening everywhere. You don't know when it's going to happen. If it's going to be on public transit, you're going to be walking down the street. You're just going to be sitting quietly at a library. You don't know, but it now happens all the time because we've imported people with different biospirit into our once really quite peaceful countries of the West. So that was the main thing that stuck out for me. And then again, something Hans was saying, which was how uh, the protagonist, the solver of the crime, is uh, is then portrayed so often now as some kind of uh, degenerate, evil, ne'er do well kind of personality. And I was thinking about the movie Silence of the Lambs, where the story is written so that um, as detestable as the killer is, you're meant to admire him, and um, and then if you read the book, uh, the character Clarice, uh, the person who's the detective in the book, she actually goes over to the dark side and um, runs off with him at the end of the book. I mean, it's a very uh, it's not it's not of the Western tradition, shall we say? And so those were the two things that came to mind in thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. That was something that I spent some time thinking on too. Just the shocking way that he's portrayed compared to the reality, and this constant um, disrespect of white men in media portrayals, which is just increasingly worse as time goes by in the current period. Um, and just the again that link to the humanity of just remembering that these were real people and real lives. And of course, I see some sort of similarities, or one may say history repeats itself in certain degrees with the other story that I mentioned of him, raiding this brothel for the rich and famous to have relations with young boys. Um, yeah, there were so many things, and also perhaps the feeling that I think a lot of people in a lot of our countries have right now of thinking, I don't feel safe to go out. I don't feel safe to go to certain places anymore. Or people adjusting their schedule because women no longer want to be out, at certain times of the day, because it doesn't feel safe. If you live in a city, having to change your routes, having to make sure you've got someone with you. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in white nations at the moment who are afraid. They're very simply afraid. And I thought, again, that's another reflection back to this time period where, as you said, this wasn't the norm. This was an unspeakable crime, and people were afraid, and people didn't want to just, go out and be out in the streets. So that kind of parallel really struck me. Hans?
I wanted to comment on consider the the murder of this young Ukrainian woman, or any white person today. Consider the enormous amount of resources that they, in that time, that they expended to find this criminal. And those women, this was class conscious England. So those women were not aristocracy, but they absolutely, went to the wall for these women, and they spent, a disproportionate amount of resources on finding this murderer, even though the state would not spend near that much if those women managed to live, not get murdered. And this shows you how much the life of white people mattered that in that time. And today it's a totally different story. We call it a hush crime because the priority is to hush it up. The priority isn't to find the criminal. In fact, this criminal, he was found multiple times and they let him go every time. So I don't want to hear anything anymore about the surveillance state, because the argument of the surveillance state is, let's increase surveillance and then we will get the information we need to find these criminals. But they have the criminal, they let him go. So I don't want to hear anything about the surveillance state.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Hans, and obviously here in the UK, I mean, we have a phenomenal amount of CCTV and so on. It certainly doesn't function to reduce crime. It doesn't inhibit people from, running around our capital city, stealing people's phones and bags and stabbings occurring and so on. And yeah, as you said, in many of these cases, people are just being let out. I've seen so many cases of people involved in the anti-white rape gangs, people who have assaulted our children and so on. And time and time again given incredibly lenient sentences or no sentence at all, because the judge considers some hardship, such as their wife doesn't speak English. It's it's very, very hard to to reconcile these things with the society that we could have and should have by now. Eindhoven?
Yeah, I think what Biospirit said was dead on with the. I mean, that's part of the fascination as when I was younger is trying to, like I said, understand from their perspective. There was always a backstory. There was always some type of like child abuse or some type of almost like their own horror story that they went through before whatever led up to them being a killer. And nowadays, it's so the common how common these knife crimes are is it's a whole different factor now, and it's I mean, and these people they're really just different. I mean, it's the amount of knife crimes, like you said, that happen in London. I think it's London. They actually they have that memorial statue called the Knife Angel, and it's made out of not knives that were used in knife crimes, and it's beautiful and horrifying at the same time if you've never seen it. I'm pretty sure that's in London, but it's one of the most disturbing tributary pieces of art I've ever seen. But I mean, that alone is a testament to how common this is now. And yeah, I mean, also too with the whole CCTV situation, I'm seeing a lot of people for some reason. I mean, there's plenty of gore on the internet. I mean, it started off with these websites like rotten.com. I'm sure everybody that's over the age of 30 is familiar with that. Now they have 5 or 6 different other ones. But the thing is there's so many people that are calling for the full video of the knife of the stabbing of Irana, but it's for what? Like, what else do you need to see if just knowing what happened isn't enough for you to react? Then what is it? And the thing is a lot of the posts that I've seen, one of our main principles that we try to spread is about the psychological manipulation of anti-whiteism, and I mean people just don't respond very well to it. Unfortunately, I have the hardest time trying to make sense to people, and I know it's not me. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's 100 different ways to say things, but at the end of the day, people just, I mean, they don't want to hear that. They want to talk about the violence. They want to react violently. And I don't know. It's just I get it. People are upset. And last night the way Jason kind of spoke on the situation. I went back and I listened to it a few times because I just needed to hear somebody uh, say it the way he was saying it. But then I get on X and people just I don't know. I don't know what people want. They're just it's very strange.
Yeah, I kind of relate there. I find that when there is an incident like this young lady being slaughtered, I find myself in a little bit of a conundrum in that I recognize the importance for the sharing of the information, but I also really dislike, keep seeing and sharing the, the footage of her actually losing her life. It's a very difficult time, I think, for us, where we are in this period where we have all these new technological advancements and we are seeing violence like this on pretty much a daily basis. It seems that certainly every week there is some new horrendous act of violence perpetrated against our people. And it certainly does take a psychological toll seeing that over and over and over again. And as you say, some of the conversations and different people's way of wanting to talk about these things and process and deal with these things can vary greatly. So I very often find that for me personally, I may post something for awareness and I may have some discussions, and then I very often perhaps take a little time away from it, because sometimes I think you can get too embroiled in the kind of comments and the stories. And for me, again, just my personal way of processing things, I suppose, I like to try to keep the sort of human element forefront in my mind. Thank you as well for your reference of the knife angel. I have added it to the jumbotron. It's on the far left of the three. It's just that the Wikipedia page was the quickest thing I could grab. But if people want to check it, you can have a look there, or obviously do a Google search. And you're right, it's a strange combination of sort of beautiful and horrific. I think that's a good way. That's a good way to pretty much sum it up. And when you look at it, you think of the history of all of those weapons that have been used, and it certainly has an impact, or it certainly has on me. Hans, your hands up?
Yes, the first thing is that loss aversion that Jason talks about. This is a beautiful young woman at the start of her life. She's a productive citizen. She fled a war. She would have probably gone on to. She was denied love. She was denied family, children. So this is a loss for our people. So that there is that loss, but there's another thing, and that is it reminds me of the Southport situation. The Southport situation, every they stretched out the release of the details to lessen the impact, and they're doing the same now. They stopped the video before the actual murder and what happened afterwards, because I think it's probably worse than we can imagine. And this is a tactic that they use to to lessen that shock and that outrage that may roll over into action, as he did in England. So I think there's definitely. I mean, I don't want to see it, we already know what the remedy is, and we are doing what we can. But the anti-whites also know that it's definitely not going to work in their favor if they just dump it all like they did for George Floyd, where everything was 24/7 in our faces, the whole thing. So there is that. I understand what you say. Um, I mean, we don't want to see anything more, but there's also we we need to recognize what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Southport killings are still very fresh in my mind, and I think they are for a lot of people within the UK. And there is a pain attached to that. So, you know, an event like this, it does kind of, you know, these things start adding up on top of each other and they accumulate. And I think it's an excellent point that you make, the way that the public are being handled and drip fed sort of various facts and so on. I also think that both of those cases highlight the public expectation and how worlds apart we are between the public expectation of our officials and the actual responses that are forthcoming, be that from the media, the police, prime minister or president. You know, people are looking for that leadership and they're looking for someone who will come and speak to them as a people. And that certainly didn't happen at Southport. And I've seen a lot of people expressing quite a lot of anger at how this most recent incident is being managed. And a lot of people are also commenting on the George Floyd incident and all of the riots and all of the knee taking. And as you say, the constant bombardment that we had to endure and just the complete silence, the silence when it's one of our people. Yeah, it's really very horrifying. Eindelen?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if of anything, if the media is suppressing the video for the sake of trying to cover it up or lessen the impact, I understand that. That's completely different. My only thing is I've noticed in the past that unfortunately gore does not have the impact that we wish it would. And I'm referencing like Jan Lamprecht from South Africa used to always, and maybe now it's a little bit different, but when he would present his any video, his websites and everything else, they all used to include crime scene photos of the farm murders. I've said that before. It's the most horrific thing that you could imagine. There's no horror movie that's ever been made that compares to the murders in South Africa. There just isn't. But the problem is those photos used to be readily available. You used to be able to look them up, and they would appear on Google along with other stuff like mob justice in Africa. You used to be able to see all that stuff. Now it's all hidden. But when it was available, I just didn't see it. It seemed to turn people off, to be honest. For me, I mean, you can't, once you see stuff like that, you can't forget it. But it's just, it's very, it's not effective for me to say I wish this would affect people a certain way. But one thing that I do think works pretty well is it's like that meme of when the grooming gangs were really, people were really starting to catch on. That meme came out with the little girl with the blue eyes, and the whole picture is black and white except for the blue eyes and a dark hand covering up her mouth. That's like the idea of like the hush crime thing. Like I think that type of stuff is pretty effective because I saw it so many times in the past. But the gore itself, I don't know. we've seen it before, and I just didn't think it really had an impact like I wish it would have.
I think I tend to agree. Yeah, both in terms of what you're saying now about the gore, and also this, I think perhaps fascination might be the word I'm looking for, that a lot of people have towards killers and psychopathy. And I think a lot of people tend to look at that in a very glorified manner, as if these people are somehow superior beings or special in some kind of way. And I guess that, of course, a lot of that comes down to movie portrayals. Biospirit mentioned Hannibal Lecter, and there are many other examples where we are kind of spoon-fed this idea that these people are more complex or more profound than the average human being. And in reality, that's just simply not the case. When you really start to look into the mind of psychopaths and serial killers, you're going to be really quite disappointed at what you find if that's the starting point you're coming from. But I think that there is something that captures the human interest around these type of sort of dark subjects, dark triad personalities, and gore in particular. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of, it's running through my mind now. I'm thinking of Jason talking, as he does so often, about how our mind can't differentiate. You know, when we're watching a movie, it's our mind is not differentiating what's real and what's not. Um, but I also think that people don't give enough credit for the reality of people who have to work in those fields. And that's another reason why, again, with this particular Westman of the Day, you know, it's, I wanted to honor people who actually were out there and doing, and still now, people who are out there dealing with the aftermath of killings and crime scenes and dead bodies, because it is absolutely horrendous. Um, no matter how lightly it's glossed over in a movie, it's those things don't just leave you. So I think you make a great point with that, Hans.
So that what Andelin is referring to is doom dissection, because Lamprecht has those horrific images, but there is no remedy for the people who are affected by those. And this is what I think just the last stream, I think Jason referred to this when he talked about when you see these horrible things, you have all this energy that comes into you, and if you don't have you don't have something where you can direct your energy to, it's going inward and it's destroying you. So and my I have two personal experiences with this. First is my a family member of mine ran a group that all he did was he spread um, these awareness of these farm murders, and he complained to me that people just don't care anymore. His group is getting smaller and smaller, and people just don't care. And it was obvious to me that you can't live your life being bombarded with these horrific images, and there's nothing you can do. It's just demoralizing. So I have these several people in my life that died because of anti-whiteism, but it doesn't bring me down. It motivates me, and um, people in my personal life, they don't understand why I'm so focused on this until they make that connection, and then they shut up, because then they know, oh, um, then they know where it's coming from.
Thank you for sharing, Hans. The emotion is tangible in your voice, and I feel that pain, and I thank you for sharing. Biospirit?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something that Hans brought up a little while ago, which was these killers that are out and about today are out and about today because anti-whites want them out and about today doing this to us. They're caught and released, caught and released, caught and released. No bail, no bail, no bail. It is a 100% preventable that these things are happening to our people, and it's continuing because of anti-whiteism, and it is continuing because anti-whites want it to continue. And I was thinking of, I saw a YouTube clip this morning when I was eating breakfast, and it was the Andrew Branca clips. And he was showing some clips of the U.S. Senate, and they were supposedly questioning Mr. Kennedy, who's head of the health department now here. And I was listening to Elizabeth Warren berate Mr. Kennedy, and she was so unhinged, so just completely lying, nasty, vindictive, to every word that you can think of for a harridan. And she just epitomizes every anti-white that is out there that is making this happen to us. And we've got to put a stop to it, because they will continue, as Jason says, they will continue until we're all gone, until every last one of us has been destroyed. It is a very deep sickness in people, and primarily in our people. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Biospirit. Yeah, as you were saying that, it reminded me, I posted it earlier in the day. I saw that the guy who was the sort of mastermind behind the 7/7 bombings in the UK, in London, is being released, and that the judge wished him sort of all the best. It's just, it leaves one lost for words to try to really process these things and try to formulate a way to express how you feel when you see this over and over again. Again, it's practically daily now. People, violent people who have hurt people, many of them who shouldn't have been here in the first place. They've hurt our people, they've killed our people, they've raped our people, they've abused our children, and they're just given a tap on the wrist, if anything. And so, yeah, I felt what you were saying. Eindelin?
One thing I was going to say about the what I've noticed on X2 is I'm not sure both things could exist at the same time. If they did actually show the whole video of the security camera. But one thing that really kind of took over was the pictures of the girl herself. I mean, she looks. I mean, she's beautiful, and that's how people are going to end up remembering her. I think that's really important. And it's the same thing with Austin Metcalf. I mean, obviously we didn't see the actual stabbing incident, but His school photo is everywhere. Like that, this is something that we also need to we have to have it. We have to be able to see what they're taking away from us. That's really important. I'm not saying that these pictures wouldn't be so common, but I'm almost seeing the pictures of who they were more than I'm actually seeing the actual incident. So I think that's kind of that's a good thing too.
That's kind of interesting for me because I have had the opposite experience. I've seen 2 or 3 of the pictures of her, which are beautiful to see actually, because obviously in the CCTV footage of she's finished her shift, you know, it's the end of the day, and then you see a picture of her when she's kind of done up, and then as you say, she's a very beautiful young woman. So yeah, my experience has been unfortunately the opposite of just seeing the train footage over and over and over, to the point that I kind of pulled away from my screen a little while for this afternoon, because it just gets a bit heavy. Just keep seeing it. And today I spoke with my family about it, and sort of, you know, I tell my children, where appropriate, depending on the incident, but I discuss it and show them examples like this of real life, of what's actually going on in the world. It makes me very, very angry as a mother that this is I have to explain events like this to a child, for them to be prepared to move through the world as, you know, as young people of the West. Hans, back to you.
I think one of the worst things in that imagery is that we have an opposite reaction to someone who is vulnerable. We want to protect, but that is that's a biospiritual instinct of Western kind that is not shared by others. Others, it seems almost as if they react to weakness as something to exploit rather than to protect. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, what that was interesting, was that this detective, he started out his career investigating the Irish Republican Brotherhood. So um, if I had to guess, I would say that's probably the forerunner of the Irish Republican Army. And this is, of course, in modern times, if you were Irish, you would call him deep state. But and there is a certain facet of anti-whiteism there, because that kind of conflict between white nations generated a lot of um, hatred between, that's still there today. I mean, we still have to deal with that today. Fortunately, or maybe not so fortunately, the Irish is starting to, you know, realize that their predicament is a predicament that's shared by every white nation on the planet. But there's definitely, when I am in Irish spaces, you get these Irish people who still see the English as the devil. And this weekend, I was with family where I still encountered some of that. And it's a wall that you cannot. It's an emotional wall that seems to be, you know, not scalable, or you know, I gave up on that. Um, and this is something that I don't know how we're going to address it, but I think this is also the older generation. I think the younger generations have other problems. But yes, fortunately, he moved on to CID, which is criminal investigations. So which I think is definitely was a better move for him.
Yeah, again, that's very relatable for me, Hans, because most of my heritage is English, but I do have one Irish great grandfather. And I feel a very strong connection to my Irish great grandfather and the sort of history there and the country, and I'm very, very supportive of the Irish Patriots and the work that they're doing. I follow some of them online, and at one point, somebody close to me said, "Oh, you should put your Irish flag as well." And I resisted for quite a long time, and then I did eventually add it to the end of my username. But I got I got into so many conversations with people, and again, you're right, it does tend to be the older generation. But yeah, the old slurs and the old names started coming out, and a lot of resentments, old wounds, at seeing that. So in the end, I just decided to take it off. But for some people, yeah, that's a wound that certainly hasn't gone away. And it's sad to see, certainly in our current predicament, because never has there been a greater need for unity and peoplehood across all of our nations. And certainly England and Ireland are so close, and we're going through exactly the same problems. Yeah, I don't have an answer either, other than to keep doing what we're doing and hoping that people can understand that we are stronger, and that the game changes when white people start to develop that peoplehood and bond on racial lines as every other group does. Gladiator, nice to see you. You have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank y'all, everybody. Thank you for letting me be here. Appreciate all of you for uniting together for our people. I want to share an actual incident that took place 2 Fridays ago. We were grocery shopping, and we were almost at the end of the grocery shopping, and it had been a very long day. We were ready to get out of there. I was about 10 feet away from my husband, and I had my head down looking at the yogurt, trying to pick me out some yogurt. Well, as I pick up my yogurt and I turn around, I see a little young blonde-haired girl, and she's standing face to face with my husband. So he's a very popular man in the community. I didn't think nothing. I went to go introduce myself. And as I'm walking up to the buggy, he looks at me and he says, "Honey, this girl says she needs help. She can't speak English." He said, "Here's the note. She needs help. It says money will do." So I'll look at the note. I make eye contact with her, and I go into my purse, grab some money. I look at her. I'm handing it to her. But as I'm looking at the girl, we're communicating together, in body language. And I could tell she was in danger, but I didn't know what kind of danger, but I just felt it necessary to help this girl. And I was going to actually dig into my purse again and try and find more money to give her. But as I looked up at her to see her, she was walking away, and I make eye contact with this big, tall black man, and he had a partner. They were in like black suits. I think the other person was a woman, a black woman. And this man makes eye contact with me. And now I'm suddenly feared for myself, my husband, and the girl, because I have no idea what's going on. So after I make eye contact with him, well, as I am, he nudges I guess, lady on the side of him. He nudges her with his elbow. He faces his head over to the girl. And so all this just happened really fast, y'all. So the girl disappears from my sight. And the last eye encounter I had with her was very deep, and it was very profound between her and I. And so I told my husband, they disappeared. I don't know where they went. So I go to my husband and I tell him, this is more than her being a shoplifter and needing money or something, because I just felt it. So I don't know if that's me as a woman overreacting. My women's intuition, is it accurate? But so I refuse to let the situation go. My husband felt like I did the right thing already. She made her point, she needed money, and that would be fine. That was not enough for me. I wouldn't let it go. So we walk around Walmart and I cannot find the girl. I'm thinking, well, maybe they slipped off out of the mechanic area. So we leave our groceries. We had already been, this is the third store we had been to on trying to find groceries we needed. So it was a really stressful day already. So our groceries get left behind. We walk it out around the parking lot. No sign of this girl. I called 911. And as I'm explaining to 911 what happened, y'all, I'm actually feeling defeated whenever they tell me, give me the description of the people. As I'm going to say, a little young blonde-haired white girl and two big dark black people, I felt defeated even trying to say it. And they put me on the phone with 3 different people. So I know they had me on recording. So I'm guessing that they were seeing if my story was matching up by making me repeat it. And so I finished the call. We got in our truck, rode around the parking lot. A cop did come out. And then they called me. And I had to repeat the story again. And as I explained to her, a young white girl, a tall black gentleman, blah, 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 blah. I just really didn't feel concern in her voice. Like I said, I felt defeated. And so the way the law is now, like, I don't even feel safe. I want to look into it. I want to know what happened to this girl. And I just don't know what to do. I'm afraid to pursue it. I'm afraid to go to Walmart and find out the facts, what happened with the 911 call. And it was a really rough night for me and my husband, because it really caused problems for us, because I just feel like he didn't take me serious enough. And I felt like he should have embraced me for that, and had some compassion for me and what I was feeling. But in his mind, he really felt the girl was fine once she had the money. So this is an actual experience that I had. And it's just been hindering me for about 2 weeks now. I would like some input from men and women, please.
Yeah, sure. We'll go around and see what people's thoughts are. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, because it's a really odd thing it's an odd combination of people. Like you say, a young blonde girl who can't speak English and these 2 black people with her. Something doesn't seem to fit. I guess your husband seems pretty clear that in his mind, she was just out for the money. But I guess that your instincts are something different. And unfortunately, yeah, as you've seen, the response, if you try to report that situation, having to describe the people involved, you're probably not going to get the best of responses, because everything in society is so white erased. The police, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not in America. I can't speak to firsthand experience, but just from my view and obviously my experience here, there's no support. And if you, as a white woman, ring up and have something to say, it's not going to necessarily be taken seriously. But I'm keen to hear what some of the people on your side of the pond have to say on it. So perhaps we can go to Biospirit.
Sure. Gladiator, I was listening to your what you were saying, and it reminds me of what I've experienced in California, uh, especially in San Francisco. There are groups, gangs, whatever you want to call them, who prey upon especially young deaf people, and they get them to do things like this. So they will have them going around in the downtown and on the public transit, and uh, uh, people in stores, like your experience, and they will hand you a piece of paper or a card or something, and say that they can't speak, they're deaf, and they need money, they need help, and then you give them some money, and the money goes to this the gang, and they're in some respect they're being taken care of, they're being fed. You know, the group uses them so they keep them alive, but they're not in any kind of a uh, loving, healthy uh, uh, situation. And so I think that your instincts were probably dead on, that she was in a very tenuous and very dangerous situation because she was being told to do this. And if she didn't do it, there were probably repercussions. And unfortunately, when you call the police about things like this, at least here where I live, they don't do anything. And they just like pretend like it's not their job or something. And I know that if you see someone, especially who's that they're hurting, they're vulnerable, and you want to help them. But how can you help them when they're under the thrall of a gang? Well, you do so at your own peril, because the gang is depending on these people to bring in their allotted money every day, and that's what the big tall black people are living off of. So that's all I can really add to that, is that I've seen the same thing, and I don't think that you were imagining anything. So I'm sorry that that's happening to our people where you live too.
Gladiator, do you want to respond, and then I'll go to Hans?
Yeah, Biospirit of the West. Thank you so much for giving me confirmation. I appreciate it. That it gives me a little comfort to know that I wasn't losing my mind and making it up in my head. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Hans?
Gladiator, I want to just commend you that you went way beyond what many people would have done. So I mean, there's no need to you need to know that you showed how you cared about this person because she's of your people. I would surmise probably what your husband's position would be is that his assessment would probably be that no intervention is possible unless the victimized person requests it. I've had that experience before. You cannot intervene when you are not sure whether it's wanted, because you can easily get into a situation where you become the victim. So I think what your husband probably assessed the situation that um, even if you were correct, no legal remedy or any other remedy is possible unless the someone requests it. If they are all on board with the whatever is going on, there's nothing any one of us can do from outside. At the minimum, this girl has to call for help. That's my position. We had not similar, but also a situation at home where we tried to intervene in a family situation. And after we spent a lot of time and effort, it all unraveled again, because problems don't just appear. These problems are life problems that are very hard to solve with an intervention. So I wouldn't beat myself up over it. You did the best you could.
I think that's a very good point, Hans. Certainly in my experience, there are people who get embroiled in either a situation or a lifestyle, and no matter how good your intention and how much time or energy or money you try to put forward as an act of help, if the person isn't ready or isn't willing, and that asking for help is the first indicator that they may be, but if there isn't even a request, there's a strong likelihood that they're not in a position to take that step. And I don't mean in any way at all to negate your instincts, Gladiator, but I would say as well that I have seen situations, not necessarily identical to this, but not beyond comparison, where there are people who are very, very skilled manipulators, and they are able to, especially with other women, sort of tap into our instincts for protection and sympathy. So who knows what her role is within that dynamic, and if it is a gang especially, who knows. So I think the most important thing is that you did what you could, and you keep yourself and your family safe. You have your own family and your own life to take care of, and you can't really put yourself in risk for everyone who pops up who hasn't specifically asked for help. So yeah, I thought it was a great answer from Hans. Eindelin?
Yeah. Great answers so far. And Gladiator, I definitely respect you reaching out to this girl and trying to help her out. I mean, you sound like a really good-hearted person, but uh, I hate to say it, where I'm from too, and it's true for our people. Sadly, is that they will take advantage of that. And if nothing else, it's really, if they're, especially with this fentanyl nowadays, I hate to say it, but that sickness, it, like, never underestimate what lengths people will go to avoid getting sick and going through withdrawals. It's something it's a whole different animal. And the fact is what used to be a good person, and you can look them in the eyes and see what they used to be, but that their mind changes. It changes the way you think. I've seen it happen to loved ones. I mean, they will take everything from you if you let them. Like I said, though, I I respect the fact that you were looking out for her. There is ways to help people. I mean, because to be honest, too, with our people, unless people think that they can get something out of them, like sexual favors or something else, that people will just avoid helping whites altogether where I'm from. Yeah, and then you got other white people they'll pass up a a white person uh, and then go help a non-white just because they're white. So I see that all the time too. But I've had situations too where there was a family. This guy he told me like he was working on getting his CDL and everything back. He had this injury on his arm. It's like he broke his arm or something. But he would sit out on the corner with his wife. He was kind of young and he had 5 kids. And he would sit out there with his kids. And it was kind of like a community thing where we would all like none of us knew each other, but we would all try to pitch in and help them any way we could, especially around the colder months. And then one day somebody just got it in their head that they're like, I'm going to follow this guy. And they ended up following him and he drove like 5 minutes down the street into the hood and he ended up copping drugs. So, I mean, and he had us all fooled and we've seen it 100 times and still fell for it with this guy. So you got to definitely don't let them take advantage of you. You're a good hearted person. So yeah, just be careful.
Adam Pardee, good to see you. Go ahead.
Just 1 second. I had to swallow the last bite of salad. Gladiator was wondering if there was a way she could follow up and see what had happened with the situation she was involved with. And there are things she could do. Primarily, I would suggest talking to whatever police force or what have you has jurisdiction in the area, and going from there, ask them what sort of, if you need to make an e-tip request, an access to information and privacy. There should be a bunch of different avenues you can follow to find out if anything more was done. You may even be able to speak to a responding officer if one responded. So there are things you can do to try and find out what happened. That was all I really wanted to have.
Digital space, go ahead.
What's going on, guys? What was it? Yeah, appreciate the space. I just thought I'd come up because, I go into all these spaces and they're talking about how bad white people are and stuff like that. And obviously, in the past, I'm not really somebody who would consider themselves as massively racist or anything. I grew up in Leicester, very mixed race population. But I am starting to think now this has clearly failed. And all I ever see online is like Muslims and God knows what else, trying to abuse kids or something like that, or being violent towards white people. I've never seen white people, only one time I've ever seen a white group attack a black person. And that was actually pretty recently in Manchester, where a group of white people on one particular day attacked this African-looking guy. And that was the only time I've really ever seen a video like that. But most of the time what I see is, and it's over and over again. There's a Muslim guy getting arrested by a group of citizens who are doing citizens arrest on a paedophile who is trying to chat up an 8-year-old or something like that. Or you see black people just literally absolutely and all enjoying it together as well. Like it's a group bonding experience where they're all just, each one of them takes a stamp each on the white guy or even attacks a white woman. You know what I mean? Like white women just getting killed on the bus the other day. But the amount of times I've seen some foreigner basically go up and full power slap a white woman or something like that. I've never seen a white guy do that to anybody, honestly. Never in my whole life. I don't think that white people do stuff like that, really. I mean, this idea that we're all doing a certain percentage of the crime, the white crime statistics are really low, especially for violent crimes, And yeah, I just don't, it really isn't safe. And, in every moment they gain more power, they abuse that power against the white people even more. Like I said in Leicester, but in the UK, the more power these guys gain, the more quickly, the more aggressively they're willing to try and take out the white communities. It's like they're trying to eradicate white people. The countryside's too white. It's England. It's like Ireland and English are apparently too white now, and they've literally changed the demographic of our whole nation against the will of the population over the last 40 years. And we never asked for any of this. And I feel like this is actually, the great replacement theory is true, it does seem that way. I never really said it wasn't true, but I think it's proven at this point, and I am actually genuinely worried that this is going to turn into some kind of a war. I don't know if we're going to hold on to Britain. I think that a better chance of holding on to America and Canada and those lands where it can be a home for like civilized Western white people. But I don't think that but basically the same thing that's happened in South Africa is going to happen in the UK. And they're already saying ridiculous stuff like black people were native to Scotland, and that black people are the native people that built Stonehenge. They're already trying to build this narrative so that they can do the same thing that they did to the farmers in South Africa, right? They're going to wipe out our entire history and kill us and abuse us as soon as they get into a position of power. They're already doing it. And this is actually a war. And we're getting killed. And I'm worried about that genuinely. And everybody tries to say, "Oh no, it's not real." But like the Anglo people, it doesn't matter which land they're in. They're being destroyed basically through immigration and stuff like that. Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Wales, Scotland. It doesn't matter, but and even all across Europe as well, like Sweden and these kind of, that particular group of people is clearly being targeted. And obviously the Chinese are getting it as well. They're doing it to other countries like India and stuff like that in a way, although it's been less prominent, but it's going to be that way in the future. And like the native people of these lands, nobody wants it. And I am genuinely worried. It seems like these globalist type people who come over to our country, exploit our systems, abuse their legal system and our people, like they just get to do whatever they want without repercussions. And we really need, I don't know what to do, but if we don't win this next election and get somebody in who's actually going to start sending these people home, I think that our whole history, the history of England, think about how crazy that is, the oldest nation in the world, basically, with the continuous unconquered reign, our whole 1,000-year history is going to be destroyed. It's insane. It's all black, guys. Everybody was black back in the day. That's not even, dude. You know what actually happened is the people from Israel, right? Some people from Israel, I'm not saying all, not saying that they're the chosen people or anything necessarily, but those people, Jacobites, with I think it's Tefi, who's a princess of the Jacobites, came over to Ireland and brought the Stone of Destiny, which was the throne that King David and Jacob and Solomon and all of these previous people were crowned on. And so we had the throne, which later became the throne that King George was crowned on. And so we have that throne, the same throne that David was crowned on, George was crowned on. Right, then we lost possession of the stone. But like, there's this idea that it's all black. It's just some fake idea of history. Like, there weren't loads of black people here when we came over. They were all Caucasian. It's so stupid. And you know what? This is the crazy thing, because it's all right laughing now, but in 20 years, they're going to use that as a justification to oppress us. They're going to use that as the reason why, and not even 20 years probably, they're going to use that as the reason why you have to pay higher taxes and that you're going to be the absolute scum of the earth part of their society, even though you're a native person. We treat the American native people like gods, basically, but the white native English people, you know, the people of Ireland, you know, they're going to get nothing.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, digital space. I mean, obviously you can tell I'm English, so yeah, I'm very familiar with what's going on here, and that could that could fill an hour or so in itself. So within this community, I think it's the first time I've seen you in this space. We follow the Go Free method. So we have a system, we have a lexicon and a methodology from the book Go Free by Jason Kuna that we use to combat anti-whiteism. And we do that by focusing on white people and promoting peoplehood amongst the white race, because at the moment we don't have that in the way that other races do. Somebody attacks someone from another group and they all are there, you know, to in a group way to respond. And that's something really, really lacking in our people. We also have ways to utilize language to our benefit. So, for example, a couple of the terms that you use there, I mean, racist, for example, is an anti-white slur used to attack and silence people who stand up for their own race and are not sufficiently anti-white themselves. Or the Great Replacement, we would refer to as white erasure, which, as you know, you've identified, is going on across all of the nations, across whether it's the UK, America, Australia. All white countries are under that attack at the moment, and white erasure of our countries, our people, our norms, our monuments, everything that is a reflection of who we are and what our ancestors have created. So yeah, let me pass it around to a couple of others, and you'll kind of get a little bit of more of a taste of what I'm speaking on. Hans?
It was quite interesting to hear him articulate the concepts that we have names for. He articulated the anti-white narrative. It's the narrative of our time where whites are uniquely evil, and where non-whites are always good and sage and ready to lay their lives down for white people. And he articulated the concept white erasure. It is the physical erasure of our people. It is the degradation and replacement of our expressions and our culture with non-whites and their expressions and their culture. It's more than demographics. It's the changing of street names, removal of statues. It's even our Western norms that are being white erased. So he's seeing these things, and this is exactly what the Go Free method is designed to address. And CKO put it well by this by centering the well-being of white people, because anti-whiteism, which is the driving force behind white erasure, it's not limited to any one group. Anti-whiteism is a social morality of our time, and it has a long history, but we can just make it a short history by saying that it was actually invented by white people in the mists of time. Our warmongering leaders, nationalist leaders, wanted to make war on other white nations, and this is where anti-whiteism started. And at some point, non-whites jumped on the bandwagon, and today you cannot be, if you're white, you can never be anti-white enough. So the non-white starts taking over. Eventually, there will be no whites. It's like you say, if this continues, it's not going to stop at England. it's not going to stop at South Africa. The entire Western civilization is under the same attack, and I think many people are seeing that. Now, fortunately, not only do we have a remedy, we have the only remedy, and the go-free method is something that is replicable and scalable, and that means because it's the core of go-free is to take the moral position. We've allowed anti-whites to take the moral position at the dinner table, at the Christmas dinner, at the water cooler or the coffee machine at work. And because our people didn't know how to defend themselves from a moral position, we just kept silent because we wanted to keep our job. We wanted to keep our family relationships. But the go-free method gives us that moral position. And you're right that we are in a war. It's a psychological war that we have been losing for at least a century now. One of the reasons why is because white people require a moral framework to function, and that was used to attack us with. If you notice what anti-whites do, they always frame our victimization either as well-being for others or as retributive justice against Western kind. And that, so they know very well that they need to give white people a false morality if they want to defeat us. But it's deeper than that, because it's hard to describe. But think about white people who are undermining their own people. Why are they doing that? They are doing that because of the anti-white narrative that they grew up in. In all the stories that they grew up in, all the movies that they watch, the music that they listen to, the villain is always the white person, and usually the one with blue eyes. And with this kind of psychological abuse, they feel it is immoral to stand up for their own people. And so what the go-free method is doing is we are focusing on white people. If we fix white people, if white people become healthy and become a people, then we can solve all our problems. But conversely, if we don't do that, we can't solve any problem, because every problem is evaluated based on whether or not it harms the well-being of white people. So no solution will be considered unless it harms the well-being of white people, as long as anti-whiteism is a social morality. So that's the problem we need to address. So that's a long answer, but the short answer is that book, Go Free, has the tools we need to recapture our destiny. And this is what we're doing here. And this is the only solution that will work. And eventually, everyone in the white sympathetic sphere that doesn't do Go Free will either be in prison or they will work for the state. Thank you.
Expertly put by Hans. And sorry, there was a few interruptions. I'm dealing with some tech issues in the background of the space. Tree God further.
Welcome, Digital Spaces. I don't really have a whole lot more to add. Hans outlined it extremely well, but nowhiteguilt.org, Westman Positivity on YouTube, did suggest that we welcome you and to the community. So I wanted to at least do that. And with that, I'll pass it back to CKO. I see Arden has his hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Arden Putty.
Okay, yeah, I only really wanted to add one point to what Hans has said, and that's with the term racist, you have to be very careful because if you are labeled with that term, or even worse, if you choose to label yourself with that term, and a lot of our people are, it makes you extremely easy to dismiss because it is very simple. I've seen it repeatedly where someone will go, "Oh, you're racist," and then all of a sudden, the entire discussion has been shut down. Now, to be fair, the sting of that word is starting to lose its potency, but by changing the language used, we're also how to put it, you cause a kind of association, or rather a lack of association with dismissibility. When someone says, "Oh, your argument is racist," then it's very easy for another observer to say, "Oh, well, I'll just completely disregard anything this person says." But if you don't label yourself racist and you instead label yourself white positive, or being in favor of white well-being, things of that nature, then it's a lot harder for them to say that you're racist because you're pointing out to them, "Look, I have no problem whatsoever with someone else being in favor of their people. I just happen to be in favor of mine. That's where my priority lies. And I have no animus towards Africans, Asians, Jews, whatever, because some of those people, Jews especially, are actually good examples of what we should be doing as a people. The way that they collectivize and work for their own people's well-being, things of that nature." So it's kind of a bit pop psychologist, but it's probably still a very valid point that you have to be careful about where you're creating associations in someone else's mind.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know if oh, sorry. I don't know if
that's okay. Go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
thank you. I don't know if I was supposed to come back on that, but that's what I was going to say. What was it? Yeah, with the whole racist thing, it's like, what do you even mean by racist anymore? It's so ridiculous. Like, if I believe in some kind of, IQ by race, or I believe that there's certain behavioral differences between certain people groups, does that mean that I'm a racist? Because if it does, then you're an idiot, basically. I thought racism was supposed to be discriminating based on the color of someone's skin, and they're trying to change that so that white people can't be racist. But I don't discriminate based on the color of someone's skin. I discriminate based on their merits and on their nationality. And if you're not from Britain and you're not English, Irish, Scottish, or Welsh, then I personally don't. I think you're a colonizer. You see all these people screaming about colonizers. They're gentrifying and colonizing our nation. These globalists against the will of the population. They sit here in our land crying about Palestine while they're conquering us. I mean, they're the hypocrites. I mean, the reason that, it's hard to take the moral high ground in an argument with these people is because they don't listen. They don't want to listen. They've got their own agenda and they're going to do everything that they can to fulfill it. And that we need to recognize that we need to do everything in our power to prevent that happening. Because if they do get into power, it will look like South Africa here in the UK. So if you want to call me a racist, call me a racist. But I think it's a cultural thing. I respect people based on their merits, regardless of skin color. I do think that the British people, English, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh people, natives of this land, should be able to have their own land. And it's a shame that that's been taken away from them. And I'd hope that everybody would think about that who's come over here and think about their place in this country and whether they should be here, really, regardless of whether they're from India and whether they're friendly and whether they like Britain. Should you really be here if you don't have heritage on this land? Especially if you're going to be complaining about the wrongs that apparently British people did in the past. Like, I didn't do anything. I've not profited in any way from the slave trade or anything. It's completely ridiculous. Our people have been oppressed and persecuted for my entire life over those particular ideas. My race has been absolutely abused and tormented, and they've used it to justify the rape of 1 million girls in our land, and they've used it to justify the genocide and the gentrification of people from London. And obviously, you guys have seen different parts of the UK. Like, it's bullshit. These people need to be stopped, and it's a war. They know it's a war. And honestly, I hate to say it, I think that we've already lost that war. It's already over here in the UK. It's probably over in Canada, and we'll be lucky if America even survives, honestly, because you look at New York, you look at Dearborn, Michigan, and dude, it's like Luton Town. And, you know, it's like London back in the day, you know? It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I think you said that you're in Leicester. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, first white erased kind of city in the UK. So it's going to be very clear for you what that looks like, and unfortunately, we are in a psychological warfare of people who do want to see harm come to the West, to the UK, and to the ethnic people of this land. And we also have a tremendous battle afoot with people who are living in areas that are not yet suffering from that type of white erasure, where they perhaps have one or two non-white people who are generally quite respectable people. They may be, you know, a surgeon or a dentist or something. So they are a million miles away from understanding what's actually coming to their area. But I would say that this idea that there's hypocrisy at play is an erroneous one. And you've kind of indicated that in some of the stuff you said, you know, all of these things about, oh, well, racism and slavery and blah, blah, blah. There are a million different responses that can be given for all those things. You can spend a huge amount of time going into the actual history, because most of these people that make these arguments are historically illiterate. So you can go through all of the different facts of the slave trade. You can go through arguments about, well, okay, what about when North Africans raided our country and took white people from our land as slaves? Let's start comparing the Barbary slave trade to the transatlantic slave trade in terms of cruelty. Let's look at this statistic. Let's look at that. But you know what? All of that is really by and by, because all of these things are pretexts. These people do not care about the slave trade. They do not care about supposed injustices that happened hundreds of years ago. All of these things are pretexts to harm us now. And when you start to understand that that's the mindset that you're dealing with people who hate the United Kingdom, they hate the West, and they hate white people. And all of these other sort of rationales and reasons, there's no hypocrisy. They know exactly what they're doing, and it is pure anti-whiteism being pushed upon you. And you made a great point there that you have been exposed to that for your entire life, and that's certainly something that I can relate to. And I will say that that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for these types of people. And it's important that we understand it will never be enough. You see now children being absolutely psychologically abused within the school classroom. The white guilt being laden upon young children over slavery, over this, over that. There's no justification for any of those things. So when you start to see that actually none of this is hypocrisy, it's very intentional, and it is part of the psychological warfare that yourself and Hans both spoke to earlier, then you can start approaching it from a different lens. Hans?
So that what you spoke about in terms of being told that the wrongs done by your people. This is what I refer to as framing your victimization in terms of retributive justice. So they will use that as a pretext, like CKO said, but they don't actually care about that because they know that, for instance, look, if you look at slavery, they know that everyone did slavery until white men ended it. Um, but they don't care about that. They just use it as a pretext for their anti-white conclusions. And that's also an example, once again, of the anti-white narrative. Because in the anti-white narrative, only whites did slavery, but in reality, everyone did slavery. So it's just one more example of the anti-white narrative where every atrocity committed by non-whites is a historical hush crime that no one needs to know about. But everything that a white person did is a hate hoax that puts the entire white race on trial forever. But the other thing that I want to mention is there's an important concept in Go Free, and that is the concept of the biospirit. Um, the human animal has an instinct, and in aggregate, it's the biospirit of the race. And this is why every race creates its own civilization. Chinese create Chinese civilization. And if you look at the rich variety of Western cultures created by white people, each one of them is a unique um, projection of the Western biospirit. This is why you have these curiously recurring Western norms in all of these Western cultures, no matter what the climate or the geography is, where on planet Earth that culture was created. We share norms like objecting to molesting, consent for sex, honor, honesty, pristine environments, dogs and cats as friends, not food, things like that. And this is these some of these norms we share with other races, but not all of them. Um, for instance, honesty is seen by other races as stupidity, but it's a core value of Western kind. And I've had an instance where a non-white service provider complained to me about this. He couldn't understand. So in terms of taking the moral position, if the conclusion is that whites must be victimized for their birth, as it is in these arguments about grievances in the past, if the conclusion is that whites must be victimized for their birth, the pretexts don't matter. It's anti-white and must be rejected. Because if you don't reject it, what's happening? You are condoning targeting white babies still in the womb for future victimization. And anti-whites have no problem doing that. If you listen closely to their language, they want to do that. They are happy to target white babies still in the womb for victimization. And in South Africa, today, young white males who were born 20 years ago, which is after all that I said, all the bad things that whites did to them, today are denied their future lives for their birth for the same pretext. They didn't even make the effort to swap out a new pretext because it doesn't matter to them. It's just a pretext. All they want is their anti-white conclusion. So absolutely, we do take the moral position. And just to give you a taste of how deep the Go Free method goes, skin color is psychological warfare. Skin color is an anti-white term that trivializes race, because race is not skin color. I talked about biospirit before. But think about the fact that when non-whites come into a Western country, they start out with numerical diffidence because out of fear for retaliation of the host culture. But as they gain numerical courage, at some point, or as their numbers increase, at some point they will gain in numerical courage. And this is what you're seeing now in places in the UK. Then they will express their biospirit, and their biospirit is very different to ours. They create environments that are hostile to us. Their norms are different. Pristine environments is not a priority. Objecting to molesting is not a norm that's shared with us. So they go their way, and eventually they will not only express their norms, they will enforce them. And this is what we are seeing now with these Muslims who are accosting white girls in the street and attacking them for not acting according to their norms. So we can absolutely take the moral position in any case, in any situation. You just need to learn how to do that, and that's in that Go Free book.
Well said, Hans. Eindelen?
Well, I was just going to mention as far as adopting their terminology. When you do that, it legitimizes their ideology, and that's something I've seen a lot today. Is people after they saw this stabbing, they started saying, "Oh, well, is it okay for me to be a racist now? Is it okay for me to say anner now?" And the answer is no, because while we might see that these words are losing power on social media, they still have they still have power in places like these anti-white courtrooms, and if you're hauled before your HR department at work and they accuse you of being a racist, these words are still used to condemn white people, and they get to define these words. It's whatever they say it is, and it's always used to condemn white people and nobody else. So it's really kind of I compare it to these people that say that they're all of a sudden they're a proud racist and everything else. It's like putting on the dog collar that they gave you, and now they can just walk your ass wherever they want. It's really it's not a winning strategy for us. So and everybody else kind of mentioned some of the terminology too. We don't legitimize their terminology.
Yeah, well said, Eindelen. And I've had that conversation, feels like almost every day in the last week or so. But it came up again with someone today, somebody trying to make the argument that those words have lost their power now. They have no meaning anymore. And I find that just unbelievable that somebody thinks that. I mean, as you said, there may be plenty of people online who are comfortable to apply that word, which is the most foolish thing in my opinion. But they were happy to apply that word. They're happy to make these arguments, and they kind of get into little spaces and groups and things, down Reddit holes and here on X as well, and they all pat each other on the back for how based they are. But as I point out to these people on a pretty regular basis, okay, so go to your HR department, go to your children's school, go to social services, and let all of them know that you proudly identify as a racist or an Islamophobe, or whatever other anti-white slur that's being used in the moment, and see how that goes for you. See how that goes for you keeping your job. See how that goes for you in the school where your children are, because you put yourself and your family and all the people in your intimate circle absolutely at risk when you start playing that game, because those words still very much have power. They still very much have lethal and legal consequences for our people. Go to a white erased area where there's a large group of non-whites and go and tell them how proud you are to be a racist. The idea that these words have no power and no meaning anymore is a complete fallacy. And I liked the a couple of things that came up there. I think was Hans was saying these norms that are norms for our people, that are not necessarily norms elsewhere, such as consent and the way we view our pets, the cats and dogs and things, is something that links to a couple of articles I actually pulled up, and I've added to the Jumbotron. There's a couple of stories here that we can discuss. The first, so on the far left of the Jumbotron, was a Guardian article I came across, which is saying, is it time to give up our cats and dogs? And Wide Awake Media has posed the question, would you give up your pet to satisfy the demands of Bill Gates? And I saw this and I thought, good luck with that in the UK. But, we discussed in the space yesterday, we were talking about Crocodile Hunter and we were looking at that. It's such a unique bond that our people have with animals and with wildlife, and we care for them and we protect them and we see cats and dogs as pets. They're not that's not universal by any means. And the other article was this horrendous story, so that's second from the right in the Jumbotron, of this 75-year-old lady. Let me just pull up her name. Give me a moment, please. Valerie Neal, who went to an NHS hospital here in the UK. She'd had a stroke and she'd been admitted to the stroke unit and then transferred to A&E. And she was lucid and chatty and doing well and expected to fully recover. And she was raped and assaulted in the hospital, and the inquest then found that she had died as a result of forcible sexual assault at least 48 hours beforehand. And it's just the most horrendous story, and I know a few people in the community have picked up on this story. She died from a large amount of blood loss, and when they were preparing the body to transfer her to the morgue, some of the staff noted that she had, but there was a lot of bleeding on the bed, and the person in charge on the day just kind of overlooked it and thought it not to be urgent. Sometimes bodies do leak fluids, and so it was kind of left. And now, of course, because it wasn't taken very seriously, all of that DNA evidence is gone. Her clothing had been destroyed, and so nobody will be held to account for the death of this lady. And I was very moved by her story. So I know a few people have covered it, but I went with this one from Ben Southwood because I happened to have found his first, and he has listed several posts underneath, and he really went to some effort to give quite a lot of information. There's also a link to an article from the Manchester Evening News about it, and in the article there's a really lovely picture of this lady. And what caught my attention was that she's 75 years old, but she thought enough of herself to make an effort and to present herself beautifully. She'd selected a nice scarf around her neck. She had a little makeup on. She had her little glimmering lipstick and some earrings, and her hair was nicely styled. Her nails were manicured or maintained well. And she was just so put together, and she looked like such a lovely woman. I read that she was well loved. She had a close-knit family. She was a retired clerical assistant. And I looked at this lovely picture of her, and I just sort of reflected on, she's a woman. And that could be your mum, your aunt, your grandma, your kid's school teacher, your neighbor. and just again bringing it back to the sort of humanity of of her life. And this article left me burning with rage. I have to confess. I think all of us have probably either been in hospital or know someone who has been, and it's a horrible experience at the best of times, especially more so nowadays because our hospitals are very white erased, so there isn't even always the care and the bedside manner, the communication and so on that there perhaps was some decades ago. But it's a very, very vulnerable time. And to think of this woman having been violated so diabolically at such a time, I found that very, very painful and hard to digest. And as I looked into this, I found out that another 2 female so-called healthcare professionals, I find it, odd to use the term professional for them, but yeah, 2 females who worked at the hospital unlawfully drugged patients on the stroke unit and then were sort of laughing and bragging about it in text messages. The person who, in relation to Valerie Neal's story, had said, "Oh, don't worry about the blood on the bed," was also found to have been selling, I don't know if it was a one-off or a repeated thing, but selling sleeping tablets that he'd presumably stolen from the hospital to people. And then there was another man in the same hospital again, who has now been jailed for 9 months for repeated sexual assaults on both colleagues and patients over a period of 8 years. And the only discipline that he got was a letter telling him to improve conduct in the workplace. So I thought I would just pick up on these, following, that observation from Hans, that there are so many things that we take for granted because they're part of our biospirit, they're part of our norms. But the more that our countries are white erased, we're seeing the real life effects of that process all around us. And I thought that these were 2 particularly shocking examples trying to convince us to get rid of our pets, and the appalling assault of Mrs. Valerie Neal. Biospirit?
Yes. First off, I wanted to go back and mention a meme curative that we have in Go Free, which is the 9 words. Atonement cannot be made for a grievance never committed. And I've always found that to be particularly helpful when people are spewing the stuff about slavery and such. And this is the story about the woman in the hospital is absolutely horrific. I can't imagine someone in my family having gone through something like that. It's just absolutely reprehensible. And that someone is given 9 months for that kind of behavior is, again, the anti-whites give as little punishment to these terrorists that they have unleashed upon us as possible, and put them back out on the streets to continue terrorizing us as soon as they possibly can. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, let me just clarify. I completely agree. Absolutely reprehensible and unforgivable that these people are running amok in our society. The actual guy who was given 9 months is not in relation to this lady. It's possible that he could have been the same man, but I think that he's a different person. But he had multiple occasions of having sexually assaulted colleagues and patients over an 8-year period, and that's all he got. He had 9 months in prison, and then so it's 3 separate things, all in the same hospital, and I think all in the same unit. So you've got that man, you've got these women drugging patients illegally, and bragging and laughing about it in texts, and then you have the assault on the late Mrs. Valerie Neal. So truly horrendous, truly horrendous. Hans?
I want to comment on the fact that this case just had insurmountable obstacles, and it just cannot be solved. And this is something that you see over and over again. In this case, it was, oh, okay, the evidence was destroyed, and oh, this other thing happened. And this is the result of the social morality of anti-whiteism. There's a lot of people, and a lot of white people as well, of all races, that because they were convinced that our norms, our history, our continuation are evil, they are taking steps where they are in society to effectuate anti-white outcomes. And it's not that they connive, but they collude. They will not do their best to effectuate an outcome that to them is immoral because it contradicts the anti-white narrative. So everywhere in society, you will have this wind against you when you are trying to get justice for a white person. Um, if the crime contradicts the anti-white narrative. So this is just something that happens over and over again, and you get this feeling that as soon as the as soon as it is beneficial to the well-being of white people, everyone's hands are chopped off, and they stand there, helpless. Which this is just impossible. It's just an impossible problem. Let me tell you, if we had Western civilization, we would burn that place down until we get the answer. The guilty person will confess. So this is all anti-whiteism. And then the other thing that I'm just as mad about the pets. Anti-whites know very well. They know very well that all the anti-white propaganda, all the propaganda against the white nuclear family, the attacks on the white nuclear family, caused white women to run to their pets as a placeholder for babies. So we white people love our pets, and even more now that white people were convinced that it's evil to have white babies. Those ones have their fur babies. But this just shows me how vindictive anti-whites are. They know because of their propaganda that there's a lot of white ladies that just has their little dog. That's the only love in their life. But they will take that away as well. And there's definitely a facet of that vindictive anti-whiteism in this initiative. And eventually it will be successful. Those white ladies whose only relief from the consequences of anti-whiteism is that little chihuahua on a lap, they will take that away as well, so that she has nothing. This is how vindictive anti-whites are.
Yeah, it's a great point, Hans. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, look at what a great job they've done of convincing women that it's selfish to have babies because of the climate, or all of these different things that they've put forward that people have just sort of blindly lapped up. So I can imagine that you'd be correct that, yeah, there will be some people who will be told, oh, don't have pets anymore for XYZ reasons, and some people will sadly go along with it. It's really, really criminal. It's really criminal. And as you say, for some people, that's truly all they have. I always find it very moving when I see people who have rescued animals and they have such an incredible bond. And they say, what motivation is there to take that away other than to cause pain and to hurt people? Tree Godfather?
A lot of excellent things been said already. You know, when it comes to using the word racist, it's irredeemable because it'll only ever, in most people's minds, it'll only ever be something that white people do. And that's why we don't use that in this community. Racist and racism, those are always going to be tied to white people, even if you try to use it to describe our victimization. Now, in terms of the patients in the stroke unit, of which I'm somewhat familiar, I hadn't brought this up because I wasn't really sure how to bring it up, to be honest. But the second night I was in, I had a little back and forth with the one non-white nurse that I had, where she came in, hung an IV bag, and hooked it up. Thankfully, it wasn't anything important. It was just saline. So it was because I was dehydrated. So it's not like it was a life-saving drug particularly, but so she had hooked up the IV tubing and she kinked it at the connector in my IV. And when she did that, of course, it just started leaking like crazy all over me. I brought it up to her twice and I said, "Hey, this is leaking. It's not even going in because you can see the bag's not going in and it's tripping the pump." And she was like, "Oh, that's fine." So I ended up getting the charge nurse involved, and I just told her, I don't know what her problem is. I don't know if she's just either anti-white or stupid, but this isn't working, and basically said that she was not qualified to be doing the job. And of course, that it may have created a little bit of fluff, but you know, I don't really care too much. So I just figured I'd share that. I hadn't shared it before. Wasn't sure if I was going to, but since we're kind of on the topic, I figured I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, thank you, Tree Godfather. And I always appreciate it when people share, personal things. I know it's not easy, and but it makes things, for me at least, I feel that way, that it makes things really hit home at a different level. I'll just say as well that I'd added another link in the Jumbotron. It's on the far left, and it was a post from Pim Pannell, Pim has been in a couple of the spaces, and I saw this reply that she had left to Ben, who had made the original post, saying that, "Hi Ben, as I understand it, there has been no arrest in this case. No one knows who did it. Over the past years, I have noticed a number of assaults and deaths of white patients by non-white medical staff. I think this is an issue that needs proper investigation. Is it something?" So she's obviously trying to get him to look into it, and she has some cases of interest. So yeah, I'm certainly going to be following that, because I agree that I think that this is something that really needs looking into. It's becoming more and more prevalent. Any other thoughts on this? Throw a hand up, or otherwise I have another topic that we can look at. Tree Godfather?
Yeah, just real quick, I was going to add in there that, if this is the way we get treated, with me, say, for example, being alert and aware, at least, of what's going on, the unimaginable horrors that our people experience when they're not aware and not able to do anything about it is incalculable.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think it really goes to show the complete lack of any type of shame or any type of personal sense of responsibility. It's just wild. It's the Wild West in our hospitals now across the West. I've added another topic to the Jumbotron. It comes up as second to the left, and this really caught my attention. Some of you will remember, some months ago, a space that I did, I covered this lady, or for want of a better word, I covered this woman's story, along with various other people who had committed fraud in connection to their anti-whiteism. So some of the people involved in Black Lives Matter and so on, who have been engaged in fraudulent activity, and so I covered her in a previous space. And so this came from Libs of TikTok. There's a little video, but the long and short of it is, so this is Tanya Fernandez Anderson, former Boston City Council member, lashes out at the media after she was sentenced to prison for a kickback scheme. She begs the media to stop covering the story and claims they're biased against her because she's Black. So yeah, it's obviously it's a video. I appreciate people can't see it in real time, but I made a couple of notes of things that she said, so I'll share that to give people an idea. It was quite audacious, really. She began by complaining that she's actually an introvert and that it hurts her when the media put her on the news. She said that she doesn't speak to them because they don't report accurately on Black people, and they are always causing trouble because they don't report facts. And then she appealed to the Black community, saying that it's them that need to control the narrative, and they need to create Black-owned media to represent them and put their stories out. And then she kind of went into a bit of a rant about, you don't care that I'm a Black woman, you don't care that I'm an immigrant, you don't care that I'm getting death threats. And then she follows that up by saying that, she's not a victim and that she took responsibility, which I presume means that she was caught and she had to do some prison time. And she says that she's asking people to humanize Black people, especially women, and especially Black immigrants. And she finishes by saying, for the love of God, stop talking about me. Just let the story go. And the story, of course, here, for anyone not already familiar, is that this woman came to the United States and she stayed there as an illegal immigrant for 30 years and then became a naturalized citizen. She was employed as a council member at Boston City, and she hired her sister and her son and then increased their pay so that she could use that as a kickback scheme, basically to make money. There were also some other issues of her receiving campaign donations or contributions over the legal limit and not doing the paperwork, in accordance with the regulations on time and so on. So yeah, I thought that this was just the temerity of this woman, and also her husband is in prison since 2002 for first-degree murder. So yeah, it really, I just found it unbelievable to see her get up and say that she's not a victim, but literally everything coming out of her mouth was pure victimhood about her being a woman and a Black woman and a Black immigrant woman. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this. By your spirit?
Yeah, she really reminds me of that woman that Trump is trying to get rid of from the Fed, the federal board, and she was found to have lied about her mortgages, and she's suing to keep her job, but there's no basis for her to sue. I mean, it's like she's being fired for cause, and that's perfectly legal to do. But she's very much on her high horse and saying that she didn't do anything wrong and that this is perfectly fine. And why are people attacking her? And it's because of her race, and on and on and on and on. This is just endless amount of stuff. And the more that our countries are white erased, the more that we will see this, because this is how a third world country is run. everyone is on the take. Everybody is doing something that they shouldn't be doing by our biospiritual standards, and that's just how things run. And so when they come here and they do that and they get caught, they're indignant about it. They're like, "What do you mean? This everybody does this," or all these different reasons supposedly for justifying their inappropriate behavior. But unfortunately, I think as the white erasure increases, we're just going to see that these people won't even be punished. They're going to, as our courts become white erased and the judgeships become more and more nodes of power of anti-whites, they will just be it will just be indifference towards anything that goes against what we consider to be appropriate behavior. So, yeah, it certainly doesn't surprise me. And as I said, I just think we're going to see more and more and more of this as we already are.
Yeah, you make an excellent point, that for so many people, they come from another environment, different biospirit, different way of living, and to them, this is completely normal. I'll see if I can find it and add it to the Jumbotron as well. I did see a post sort of mentioning some of her background, that she came here, as I said before, she came illegally into the United States, and she came with her mother, and at some point the mother just left her here and the mother went back, and just left her here to fend for herself, which I thought was an interesting kind of addition to the story, whilst it's not pertinent to the kickback scheme. And I think it was around maybe a £7,000 or £8,000. I have to double check, but I think it was somewhere in that region that she managed to sort of steal through the kickback scheme. So whilst it's not directly related to that part of the story, it did sort of highlight to me again, that's something that's not our norm. You'd be hard pushed to find many stories of a white mother taking their child somewhere and just leaving them there as a young person to fend for themselves in a foreign country. It's quite outstanding. Hans?
It's always interesting when I see people like this. When you sorry, when you see their arguments, like this woman who says that blacks must create black media. So she's apparently not aware that blacks are angelized in the West, and she's also not aware that um, the whole point of the anti-white media is to propagandize white people. So black media is not going to do that very well. So she seems very stupid, yet she articulates the anti-white narrative so well. And it's always interesting to see that, because of course the reason why she can articulate the anti-white narrative so perfectly, by all her playing the victim everywhere, is because every one of us grew up in the anti-white narrative. We were trained by the media from when we were small, and this is why, if you think you are going to be white negative and fight the battle from that position, you are going to be defeated by low IQ people who are barely intelligent enough to drive a car. They are going to defeat you because you are inside the anti-white narrative. You need to get outside of the anti-white narrative, because those people like this woman, they are not even the real adversaries, the real victimizers. The real victimizers are a lot smarter than her. And you need to be in your own story if you want to have any chance at all.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of details as well. Yeah, Biospirit, it was £7,000 that she got from the kickback scheme, and she had to pay 13,000 in restitution, and she was only sentenced to 1 month in prison for it, which she has to report for that, I believe, in October. But my understanding, and this is not fact checked, but from sort of quick research that I looked into, is that her salary for the job that she had would have been somewhere in the region of £120,000 a year. And I noticed that from her arrest video, it looked like a nice home, a nice house that she had, so it's quite remarkable to have, that type of salary. And all she had was to pay, a little bit, pay back what she'd taken, and not even double, in terms of restitution, and a month. I mean, it's barely a slap on the wrist again. Should we go further?
Yeah, once again, it highlights a complete biospiritual incompatibility. It's not our similarities that make us the same, it's our differences that make us different. I remember when she was hired onto the council, that of course it was done to much fanfare, very much like the woman Biospirit was talking about on the Fed. We see these glass ceiling breakers and they're celebrated, and they always turn out to be crooked because, of course, that is their biospiritual norm. I would have been absolutely amazed if she wasn't crooked in some form or other. To answer kind of your question, yes, she was very well paid. Starting salary for Boston City Council is 200 grand a year, so that she had no reason to steal anything except just sheer greed, and again expressing her natural biospirit onto our environment, unfortunately. But I just wanted to throw it in there. It would be amazing if they didn't, and that's why so many of them, end up getting caught.
Hans?
This lets me think about, this is a common occurrence where people with a different biospirit will act completely incomprehensible to us. And what anti-whites will sometimes do is they will actually argue that it makes no sense. And it feels like a good argument for us because it doesn't make sense if you have our biospirit. But we must we must find a way to nuke that argument. I remember one of my friends, she's a magistrate, and she tells me stories that are, there's a director of a company. They caught him dead to rights with all the evidence, physical evidence of door times and security cameras. He went on a weekend to his employer and he stole an inkjet printer. And even when they presented the evidence, he kept denying it. He wouldn't take responsibility. And sometimes anti-whites will come with the argument that it would make no sense for this person. He has a Cadillac with spinners. Why would he steal an inkjet printer? And the answer is, well, he's not white. So why do you apply Western standards and norms to his behavior?
I think it's a good point, and I think we have to get used to thinking in that way and teaching that to our children as well, because we've been so inundated with this idea of, oh, we're all the same, and our children are taught that in school, in various forms. So I think we have a lot of work to do in kind of bringing that mindset to our lives, our people, and our children. Yeah, to stop having expectations of our norms for people who are not our people. Julia, nice to see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as someone who grew up in Massachusetts, I'm pretty upset to hear about this woman being in Boston and her whole family. Very, very unacceptable. Also, I have a personal story. My father was an OBGYN and he practiced for at least 20 years in Massachusetts, in Boston specifically. And he did a lot of pro bono work. He was one of those types of people who could never say no to anyone. So he actually got taken advantage of a lot, especially by selfish non-whites, but he was a very good man, very white biospirit. But unfortunately, his office manager didn't do the taxes. And so when he retired, well, actually, he didn't retire. He had his license taken away because of blacks ganging up on him. But that's a whole nother story. And that happened in the U.S. Virgin Islands. But going back to the main story, he had to, of course, pay back all the taxes. The office manager did not. Only he had to pay them back, so they were taken out of directly out of his bank account. And he was also hit with huge fees, like hundreds of thousands of dollars of fees, fines. I mean, not $13,000 fine. I mean, despite being well known in the community for his pro bono work and yeah, I mean, and it not even being his fault in the first place. So yeah, it's of course consistently anti-white, and this was more than 20 years ago. So that's how bad it was, even in the 90s. It's been this way for a long time.
Thank you for sharing, Julia. I know the feeling of when a story is sort of in your own backyard or personal to you. It hits home at times. I never fail to have that feeling. Very often I see things, videos and stuff that are going around social media, and I suddenly realize that they're in my city. So I can very much relate to that. Well, we've had quite a few pretty heavy going topics in the space. So I wanted to share this story that I came across, and I thought it was just lovely. So if you have a look at the far left of the Jumbotron, it's an article from John Luke, excuse me. And it's just a short video. You can actually watch it. You don't need the sound. You'll pick up pretty quickly what's going on. So this was at Hershey Park, and John Sampson, a civilian guest, bravely saved a young boy who wandered onto the monorail tracks. The boy had become separated from his parents. He was quickly rescued thanks to Sampson's quick thinking and courage. But this really caught my eye because we have seen other videos like this of accidents in fairgrounds and similar. And when I watched it, the first thing that caught my attention was every one of our men of the West that you could sort of see in that video are all suddenly in motion towards the problem. And I just loved that. It really gave me something to smile about, especially this week when we've had such a heavy week in terms of things going on for our people in the news. So I wanted to share it and just hear people's thoughts. Tree Godfather?
Come back to me.
Sure. Oh, Julia, your hand's up. I didn't see. I apologize. Go ahead.
No worries, you just spoken to him anyway. So this reminds me of something that happened pretty recently, maybe a year and a half ago or so. I was going to get water, and I get these huge crates of water that are very heavy, and in order to, I get them a lot of them at a time, and I have difficulty getting them in and out of the cart because of my back, and so I always ask for help. And this one time I was unloading the cart into my car, and there were about five white men equidistant from me, and I asked, just could someone please help me? And all of them immediately came towards me uh, at the same speed, and it was just a moment of, oh my goodness, how privileged am I to have these wonderful white men who are always willing to help me. And it was, again, like you say, with this incident with the young boy, another beautiful moment showing the the kind and helpful biospirit of our white men.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've talked in a few spaces about these old concepts stemming from medieval Europe through the different time periods of the warrior knights, and how that developed through into the code of chivalry, and how that's changed over time. But we still see that connection and that lineage through our people of certain forms of morality and the way that their masculinity is expressed. And this, yeah, for me, when I saw this clip, I really, like I say, it just brought a smile to my face. I think our men don't get enough praise and enough credit, and especially the way the media is set up, everything is negative. I mean, everybody, I think, knows that I don't watch television, I don't have television, but I am aware whenever I see something, you have a white woman, you can guarantee that the man next to her has been, if it's a remake or whatever, he's been white erased and changed to a man of another race. If you see an advert on a billboard, or anywhere, pretty much, a magazine, internet, what have you, the same thing. The constant push to tell white women that where they belong is with non-white men is really outrageous. It's an egregious attack on our people. And yeah, we don't get to see things like this, just happy white families on a day out at a sort of, I guess this is I'm not familiar with Hershey Park. I guess it's like a sort of fairground type environment, sort of maybe like a lesser version of a Disneyland type of thing. That's what I'm assuming. Maybe someone can fill me in. But yeah, I just loved it. I just loved the sudden motion of all these men just zooming, towards the direction of the danger. And yeah, it really cheered me up. Eindlin, any thoughts? Are you familiar with Hershey Park?
No, I've never been, but yeah, it's an amusement park. Roller coasters and all that type of stuff. I've never been, but it's really popular in the States. So, but yeah, I mean, these types of situations. I, I can't imagine a situation where somebody's child was in danger and we didn't act on it. So it's really like that they did exactly what they're supposed to do. But I mean, I say that and I take it for granted because we've heard some horror stories where other people are involved. Not so much Westman, but I mean, I don't want to turn this story into a tragedy, but we've definitely seen them. But I think that's awesome. Like that's great that everybody kind of came together and looked out for them as they should have.
Hans?
I just want to highlight that um, it's good that he was in shape, that he could help, because in this instance, it just highlights the fact that it's important when you are called upon, take care of your body and your health, because you may be able to save a life.
I really like that. I really like that. And I think that's positive messaging. And again, I think that is something that we need to pick up on with our children. We were talking, was it, yeah, just yesterday, when we were having the conversation about education and our young boys especially just being limited to sitting at a desk and then being pathologized or medicated because they fidget. and how unnatural it is for them to spend that much time just sitting, staring at screens, not getting out, not running around, not, burning off that energy. And I think that a lot more could be done to invest in our young men understanding their bodies, having health, understanding nutrition, yeah, developing different sort of schools of exercise, learning how to train, getting involved in sports in different ways. I think certainly here in the UK that's a massive problem. I mean, there is football and so on, but yeah, I think we've got big improvements to make in that area to get our people back, and bringing back some of that kind of masculine warrior mindset as well, like having young men who take pride in their physical strength and being strong. I think is no bad thing. I think it's an entirely good thing, actually. Tree Godfather?
Not nearly as comparable as saving a young boy from a monorail, but I've been at a lumber yard, and of course I'm a big guy. I'm capable of loading the truck myself and all the stuff, but I've had piles of guys just without even asking come over and just start grabbing stuff and help throw it in the truck. That's the epitome of the Western kind mindset, in my opinion. That's just how we are. I especially appreciate what Hans said about taking care of yourself as much as possible, because you do never know when you can make a huge difference in somebody's life. And last, I'll just drop in if Digital Spaces is listening on YouTube. I see a bunch there. I did drop you the Go Free book in your inbox, and look for it there.
Thank you, Tree Godfather. Julia?
Yeah, not to drag things down too much, but it's just so different from how it is in the city. Because where I live is in a rural area of Germany, but when I'm in the city, it's so busy, and mostly filled with non-whites, of course, as our cities are so white erased. And when I'm struggling with two heavy suitcases and there's no elevator, uh, people are like literally pushing me, and no one is offering to help. And some of those are white men, unfortunately, as well. And yeah, it's just really sad how that has broken down the sense of community that we used to have in cities. I feel I I don't think that I can't imagine that 150 years ago in London that a nicely dressed, well presented woman would have been left to struggle with luggage. That seems like that wouldn't have been the case.
I agree, absolutely, absolutely, and it's something I definitely struggle with. I see clips of England, and some of them are countryside, some of them are city, many of them are from London, but I see these old clips of different eras in the past, whether it be the 60s or the 20s or any kind of time. I look at them and a little bit of my heart kind of dies. You wonder how on earth we got this far, how things went this badly, in such a short period of time. And I know that even within the span of my own lifetime, just my day-to-day lived experience of how people interact, I can certainly relate to what you're saying about, that those norms are just being annihilated. Um, even just day-to-day manners. There's little self-care in people. There's little dignity at times in people. You see people just going to the shops in their pajamas, and that was what really touched me about the lady I brought up earlier. That's why I mentioned, she was 75 years of age, but she still thought enough of herself and others to get up in the morning and You know, she had these really cute little modern glasses and sort of glistening lipstick and her earrings in and her hair done. And I think that it's a tremendous loss when people stop caring enough about themselves and about society in general to even put their clothes on to go out for the day. I don't think I'll ever be able to reconcile that with a healthy, normal society. Einderlin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I've seen our women do this type of stuff too, where they chip in and help out when the kids are in need. One time in particular, um, it was my mom. It was me, my brother, and my mom. We were at this community haunted house, and it was a really good one. These guys, I mean, they put on a good haunted house. But so we're there, and one of the exhibits, I guess you call it, it was this guy with a chainsaw, and he's just running back and forth like a psychopath. And I'm like laughing at it, but I turn around, I look at my mom, and these two little black kids are like holding on to my mom for dear life, like they were terrified. And I lost it because I mean they were legit scared, but they were young too, and their mother wasn't anywhere to be seen. I don't know. I couldn't imagine sending my little kids into a haunted house like that by themselves. But my mom just kind of held on to them, and they were just like they were losing it. But yeah, that was a moment in time.
That's a really cute story, and I have to say I'm almost slightly jealous of your haunted house. I think I would have great fun there. I was never really like massive about Halloween, but one of my children really loves Halloween, and so through their sort of passion for it, I over the years have become completely seduced, and now I am the biggest Halloween fan, and I love getting really into all the decorations and all the things. And yeah, this year I have some fun things that I've got lined up for my outside the house and things for the neighborhood children. So I'm looking forward to that. Uh, Gladiator, your hand went up and down. Did you want to jump in?
Hey, I'm sorry. I wanted to say where our people have failed is we have become too passive with the attacks on us. Just every day, um, we encounter some type of anti-white behavior, whether it's going to a gas station, a grocery store, Home Depot. And the only way we are going to overcome this is by speaking out, pointing it out with the proper language and evaluating the situation first. For example, I know if you're out in the street, you can't just, you really can't, we can't defend ourselves sometimes, we can't. But like being in a public location, and if we're dealing with an employee, for an example, I'll just give a real live example. During the week, we went to go get some fried chicken livers. And we finally found a place after searching for 3 months for some chicken livers fried and gizzards. And the woman, the non-white woman, she was just so rude. She just dug that spoon or her hand, whatever she had, to pick up those livers. She was so vicious and so angry about it. And she was doing it to every white person. She did it to the white gentleman before us. And I was really impressed with the way my husband handled it, because after she was done boxing up our livers and gizzards, he got to the register, which the cashier and the register was really side by side with the lady that was working the food bar. And he looked at the girl, she was white. He looked at her, but he said it loud and clear where that black lady could hear him. And he said, "Where is that big, tall gentleman that cooks the livers?" And the girl said, What gentleman? Which one? He said, it was the tall one. He says, I want from now on for that man to fix my livers when I come in here. I do not want that lady serving me anymore. She is mean and she is rude. So you see how he did it indirectly, but the message got out and she was able to hear. And if more of us would point that out, these actions, these malice actions that are taken towards us, if we would point them out, I think it would make a big difference. Because right now we've been so passive that everybody knows that they can just do anything they want to us and get away with it because we have allowed this to happen. Now, I wouldn't say go out in the street and address somebody, just anybody like that, because they might have a gun. But with this being an employee, I would say she probably would not have a weapon to go get and come shoot us. I would say that this was a safe time to practice the dialect. You know, he didn't really use any words in the Go Free book, but it's still the same, you know, it's still in the same format to me, you know, as far as this particular situation goes. He addressed it, he pointed out, he made sure that woman heard that we as white people do not appreciate being handled that way. That's all I got to share.
Yeah, I guess it's using, you know, your discernment to judge the situation. And there certainly are times where we can speak up more. And you're reminding me of today, I saw a post, was in a supermarket in the UK, and some people had sat down in the middle of the aisle to do a protest. And one guy had sort of used his trolley to push one of the women out of her space. I think she'd gotten up and, you know, a little bit of a disagreement had ensued, and then another lady was coming to shop and she wanted to get by and the people wouldn't. And, you know, my response to seeing that, which I guess, you know, it ties in as what kind of came to mind for me when you were speaking, is that there were certainly times where we could live with more integrity and we could make ourselves known and heard. For me, if I go to a shop and that happens and the staff are not dealing with it, I won't be going to that shop again, and I will make sure they know why. And I basically try to go through my life and I look at where I source my purchases from. I try to make sure that I live in a way that reflects my values and the world that I want to see and I want to create. So I, for example, will not shop at the UK supermarket that helps to fund mosques because I don't want mosques in my society. So I think that, yeah, there's certainly things that we can do that a lot of people out there haven't done out of a kind of general malaise. You know, it's easy sometimes for people to just plod along and keep doing what they've always done because that's easy, it's comfortable. It takes a bit of time and research and sometimes even a little inconvenience. You have to go a little bit further, or you have to plan a bit more carefully to get to places and know what you want from what store or whatever the case may be. But I do think that there are times, yeah, where we can speak out. Another example, I think, again, here with the supermarkets, we see things put up that online people are going crazy about. For example, when the shops started changing the name of Easter eggs to celebration eggs, I saw so many people ranting about it online. And I think, how many of these people sat down and wrote an email to the shop, or, you know, to the main customer service of that chain? So I do think that, yeah, there are times, whether it's directly with a person or whether it's with a business, I agree that I think we can sometimes, yeah, make our opinions heard. Hans?
Gladiator reminded me because on Sunday I flew back home, and in the metal detectors, you have to take out your your laptop and take off your belt and everything. And but I have a very thin card holder, and that thing has no metal, so I always leave it in my pocket, because it has my ID card and credit card. I don't want to throw it in a container. No, they stopped me. No, I must put the card holder also in the container to go through the X-ray or whatever, the metal detector. And then I flicked it into the thing. And this is of course all non-whites, and this seemed to trigger them. The way I flicked it into the so now when I went through the metal detector, now they had to body search me. But it was so petty. And but this goes back to being healthy and fit and everything, because if I was not fit and not healthy and didn't feel like a Greek statue, that would have been humiliating. But he could feel my abs, and he could feel me up, and he could feel this is a white man, and he's standing tall, and there's nothing he can do to me. So so I walked away. It was a small victory for me, and their pettiness just came back to them. So I would just once again say, it really, there's something about being fit and capable that's psychological to a man, and you will see it in the behavior of other men around you. Every centimeter on your chest, it brings more respect.
I will never be able to think of you in the same way now, Hans. Every time I think of you, it will be with Greek pillars either side. Gladiator.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, even I've tried going to the chain of command and going straight going to corporate office, like on Home Depot and Lowe's, because we just can't get that Western help anymore. Like when I was a child growing up, everybody was so attentive when I was growing up, when we went out in public, and going shopping. Everything was so accurate, precise, attentive. And so now you can't even go to corporate office anymore because they're running everything. The non-whites are running everything. So I guess my point is, just as long as we can make that point, it's up to ourselves as individuals, really. Now we're on our own. And just by addressing and pointing that out to that anti-white person, I think could do our people a lot of good. If we could just get people motivated and more confident in themselves as white people, to know that this is not okay the way our people are being treated in society today, I think we'll start getting somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that relates to what Julia was saying before, that in a comparatively short amount of time, there are changes that have been brought about that have made our world unrecognizable. And the feeling is gone. All of these things that we were able to enjoy, as you say, good customer service, attentive care. If you're buying something or whatever the case may be, all of those things have just been wiped erased from our environments. Some places more than others, of course, but it's all heading the same way. So I guess that it's not even about always, trying to influence that, but just having that focus on bringing our people together as a people. Well, did it load? Let me have a look. I had one last thing that I thought I would wrap up with today, and this is also again from John Luke. So shout out to him for some good articles today. But I saw this. I don't know if anyone else has come across it, but I thought it was just superb. This park ranger. I don't know where this takes place, and perhaps some of you across the pond may be able to identify from the uniform. So please do let me know if you do know. But park ranger uses a shotgun to separate and save these two bucks, so the antlers are locked. And this was just phenomenal to watch. What a skilled marksman. Yeah, like right on the point. And amazing, just amazing, able to shoot on point to separate the antlers, and off they both go, able to live another day. So let me pass around on that. Tree Godfather, any thoughts on where this may be? Do you recognize the kind of uniform?
I've seen this clip. It's a couple of years old. I don't remember where it happened, to be honest. But yeah, absolute perfect example of our biospirit, particularly when it comes to how we handle animals, how we value them and care for them. Brilliant shot of right on the antler, gets them separated. And of course, they drop them every season. So these aren't permanent. For those who don't know, they do grow back. They grow back every year. So yeah, what a stud. Well done.
Yeah, I was very glad it was a man of the West on the on the end of that rifle. Biospirit.
Yeah, I think Jason actually showed this on one of the gatherings recently, and the uniform just reminds me of our Park Service uniform, but I don't know what park it would be in. I mean, it could be anywhere, so I'm not sure where.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hans?
At first, I thought, no way, no way. He wanted to kill the animal, but he missed. But then when I watched the second time, I saw that he waited until they froze in position for a few seconds so that he can be sure that they won't jerk when he pulls. So it was a real shot. And then I also remembered, because you see these kind of feats, and then your first reaction is, no, that's not, that's not possible. But I remember my uncle. My uncle used to be so good with a rifle, because when he was a boy, he would go into the veld and he would hunt field mice, but he would shoot from the hip. And I actually saw that once with an air rifle. He would be able to shoot from the hip a field mice when it breaks out of the grass. And this is what happens when you take care to learn your trade. And in this case, this person is obviously very skilled and takes pleasure in making a good shot. And this is another facet of anti-whiteism, where they pathologize our love of guns. That making that perfect shot, that was a perfect shot. The fact that so it's not about killing the animal, it's about making that perfect shot. And I'm pretty sure that was as if he had brought down some trophy animal. So this is excellent. Yes, and my first instinct was that this is probably the anti-white narrative that worked on me, to think, no way, he wanted to kill the animal. And this is another demonstration that I think we are all infected, and we are slowly healing when we, in this community.
Hans, that's so wonderful, and I thank you for that, because it's wonderful to catch those moments, and it's humble of you to share it. But it's wonderful to catch those moments where we see in our own mind a thought and then we catch, well, where did that come from? Why do I think that? And when we start to tug on the thought, we realize that there's a snaky little tendril of antiwritism behind it. So that was a perfect illustration of that point. Well, I'm going to wrap up soon, but I wanted to leave you all with this post on the far left of the Jumbotron of this absolutely adorable owl with her little baby. And I thought this was a gorgeous example of our love of animals throughout Western Kind. And if this doesn't make you smile, then you may be beyond the help of my services. So I hope you enjoy it. And I guess we'll just run around for some final thoughts. Gladiator, any final thoughts from you?
Be strong, everybody. Stay in good health and be strong.
Good advice, sister. Julia?
I'm still just picturing Hans in his Greek glory, so thank you for that delightful image.
Yep, that works for me too. That's a whole new perspective on Mr. Hans the Skipper. Biospirit, final thoughts.
Thank you for leaving us with the video of the owl and the baby owl. That's just lovely, and great space again today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Biospirit. Yeah, we had a few pretty heavy, hard-going topics today, so I thought that was just something cute to add a smile at the end. Hans, final thoughts?
This is so beautiful. I love the baby. The babies, yeah. We have, at the farm, one of the sheepdogs had a litter, and it's incredible how those little puppies, how they complain like little children. Yeah, there's something about seeing a baby and the parent next to each other that's just, it makes you melt inside. It's wonderful. Thanks. It's that female touch that we need sometimes to take the sharp edges off.
I appreciate you very, very much, Hans. Thank you. Einzelin.
Yeah, another great one. Really appreciate you hosting this again. And yeah, the last two videos, they're great. I love animals, so perfect way to end. So thanks again.
And Tree Godfather, final thoughts.
Well, sister, guns and fluffy baby owls. Not pretty hard to beat that for an ending. Excellent space today. Very enjoyable. A lot of positive feedbacks on the YouTube stream. So I'll be posting those up as possible. And I love you guys. You all have a great one.
I don't know what to say. Perhaps I'm becoming a little American in my old age. Perhaps I'm developing a new connection and love for guns. But the fluffy animals have always been something I enjoy. And I'm sorry we had a bit of issues throughout the space with some trolls trying to attack the space. Not brave enough to come in and actually say anything, but yeah. So I was dealing with that and a few tech issues. So I apologize that I haven't really addressed the people who are listening from YouTube, nor acknowledged all of the listeners or read in many comments today. It's just been a little chaotic, but I certainly do appreciate everybody and thank you to the people who did leave comments. And so with that, today is Monday, I think. I'm too tired to know what day of the week it is, but this has been the Monday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing No White Guilt Space. You can find us here daily on X at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We practice the Go Free lexicon and concepts as developed by Mr. Jason Koner, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find Jason here on X as at No White Guilt NWG. or elsewhere as simply No White Guilt. You can also find him online at nowhiteguilt.org. Thank you all for coming, speakers and listeners alike. It's been wonderful, as always, to be in your company and to hear everyone's thoughts and contributions. The Shade